Haneda Airport is the possibly secondary/main airport of the populous city of Tokyo. The airport is constructed in the middle of the Tokyo city, much like Itami of Osaka and Komaki of Nagoya. The airport is one of two, the other being Narita, in the busy city of Tokyo. Tokyo Haneda Airport last year was ranked the fourth busiest airport in the world, behind Los Angeles, Beijing capital, and Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. So this will be a first parter, where we will talk about the history of Haneda, from being a two-runway small airport to a major gateway and the fourth busiest. In 1929, the Japanese Empire started to construct a new airport for the city of Edo, which is now Tokyo, to replace the aged and possibly forgotten Tachikawa Airfield. Tachikawa! It opened on August 25, 1931, with the first flight being from Dalian, unoccupied China. When opened in 1931, most of Haneda's flights were from occupied Japanese countries such as China, Korea, and the Republic of China, which is currently Taiwan. In 1931, the Japanese Empire was planning to create a new airport the size of Berlin Tempelhof, back then the biggest airport in the world. All these plans went stinking far ahead until Japanese decided to bomb Pearl Harbor and went into World War II, and it was used as a military airfield. After the war, the US government used the airport as an airfield to deliver supplies to Japan for a post-war miracle to help Japan become strong again. During the Korean War, Haneda was used as the main airport for the US in their war against US Air Force for their war against the DPRK, or as we all know it now, North Korea. Although this changed quickly when the US and South Korea started winning, and the US moved their main Air Force base to Gimpo Air Base, leaving Haneda as an airfield. After the US left Haneda, the newly established Japan Airlines started flying domestic flights. Meanwhile, a 1952 proper terminal was made, with Air France and BOC starting flights to there from Europe, while SAS started flights from Copenhagen. Meanwhile, in 1967, Aeroflot and Japan Airlines started a codeshare flight, with Aeroflot handing over some of its planes to the now growing Japan Airlines. Meanwhile, in the 60s, a new airline was established with the All Nippon Airlines, a secondary airline to fly around Japan, and also Toa Domestic Airlines, which would later become Japan Air System, was also established to fly domestic flights. In 1950s, Pan Am and Northwest Airlines established hubs in Haneda to fly to Asia. Other flights here include Civil Air Transport, Thai Airways, CP Air, Swiss Air, Aeroflot, Cathay Pacific, and Qantas. Much better. In 1964, the Tokyo monorail was established, which would become a mainstay of Haneda until the opening of the international terminal. Just in time for the 1964 Haneda Olympics. Yet, by this point in the 60s, jets have risen and so have noise concerns. With that, the government decided that they need a new airport far from the city. So in Narita land, they constructed the new Tokyo International Airport, and thus in 1978, all international flights and Pan Am flights and Northwest Orient flights moved to new Narita Airport. Although all international traffic left Haneda, it was still open to serve the domestic market, which by 1981 had been dominated by three airlines, namely the flag carrier Japan Airlines, who flew to domestic destinations with 747 SRs and 767s, the all-domestic Japan Air System, which flew to many domestic destinations with their fleet of McDonnell Douglas MD-80s and A300s and DC-10s, and the ever-growing All Nippon Airlines, which was establishing many long-haul flights and also domestics. These three airlines dominated the domestic market at Haneda, which no airline ever had, which was in fact interesting since it was still going strong. While Narita established itself as a hub for the now crippling in debt Pan American Airways and the thriving Northwest Airlines, Haneda was now a domestic hub. During the mid-1980s, the government decided to expand Haneda, starting in 1988 with the addition of the longer runway, that being runway 16R/34L. In September 1993, Terminal 1, or the Big Bird Terminal, opened, and replacing the 42-year-old original terminal, which was demolished in 1996. In 1997, a second runway opened, which closed the original runway 15L/33R. In 2000, runway 16R/34L opened, and in the site of Terminal 2. While the original terminal and runway 15L/33R have been demolished, while the original parallel runway 422 was closed. I do not know. The Haneda Highway was closed, so was the Haneda Highway. In 2008, Haneda, Japan Airlines, Korean Air, and Asian Airlines started flights to Seoul International Airport as a feeder flight ever since international airlines deserted Singapore in preparation to return for the bigger Asian airport. While in 2007, Chinese airport engineer Wen Jiabao allowed flights to Shanghai International Airport. In 2008, Haneda flights started flying again, now in the front of Beijing Taiwan International Airport. So the flight shift to the larger Beijing Capital International Airport. Although with all these international flights, Tokyo Haneda was still considered not an actual international airport due to the fact that it only has flights to Hongqiao, Beijing, and Gimpo. But by the 2000s, there was only one American airline in Narita, and that was Northwest Airlines. And now it is merging with Delta, and hubs were in Spoke. And many airlines wanted to get out of Narita's high expense and states. Haneda was thought to be able to handle the much international traffic that was from Narita. So in 2008 through 2009, two new projects were constructed. A new international terminal, and B, a new runway. Okay. So in 2010, the International Building, or nowadays known as Terminal 3, opened to serve all international flights through and from Haneda, while in 2011, the new runway opened, runway 5/23. In 2014, the international terminal was added to appear here with 8 gates. In 2018, the Japanese government started expanding Haneda in preparation for the Tokyo 2021 Olympics. While in 2017, 4 satellite terminals were added to Terminal 2 along with Pier B. Part 1. Tune in next time for part 2. Yay!
Subscribe to the channel and like the video.
And then I'll type it in.